In December 1959, the Inspector General of the U.S. Air Force issued a directive to the command stating that unidentified flying objects treated lightly by the press and referred to as flying saucers are serious business. In serious business indeed, because there have been many people who have lost their lives and then the pursuit investigation of unidentified flying objects. Before I get on to the Valentich case, I'd like to give you a couple of examples. Kinross Air Force Base, November 1953. There was an unknown spotted from the air base at Kinross. They had one interceptor, and they scrambled that interceptor and vectored it into the proximity of the UFO. The captain, Felix Monclay, and his witness, Lieutenant Wilson, described the object as a cigar shape spinning. As they moved closer to the object, first there was static in their communication, failed altogether. And then there's the MiG jets at the listening station off Key West in February 1967. The listening station picked up the voices of two pilots out of Cuba flying MiG jets. The first pilot radioed the base back in Cuba that there was an unknown, a cigar-shaped object, and he was instructed to challenge for identification, which he did. Of course, no response. The next instruction came from Cuba was to fire on the object, which he did. When he fired on the object, the cigar shape just went a circle, come alongside. There was no cannon fire. The MiG jet just disintegrated. What was going on was the pilot in the second craft was screaming back to the base in Havana. We don't know what happened to the second jet, but although this case happened back years ago, in 1994, I went to the Key West and checked with some contacts who confirmed this. And just recently, Frederick Valentich was the 20th case that we know about. We've always said there'd be an X number we didn't know about, but we found out about two more. I found became personally acquainted with an investigator who investigated wrecks for crashes for the U.S. Navy, but this was a case that he had investigated. It was a UFO case, and I hope that we can be able to tell you more about this case when the conference in October in Melbourne. We're not in the clear yet. We don't want to get anybody's tail in the crack. Now, Frederick, next slide, please. Next one. During the evening of October 21st, 1979, 20-year-old Australian pilot Frederick Valentich disappeared over Bass Strait while flying from Melbourne's Moorabbin Airport to King Island off the coast of Victoria. He lost communication. His last communication occurred at 7:12 p.m. during the largest UFO flap in Australian history. Nearly 19 years after that fatal Saturday evening, no trace has ever been found of either the pilot or his blue and white Cessna Model 182 aircraft. During my travels and correspondence, I found many false stories circulating around the world regarding this most important case. I have found that these inaccurate statements are coming from individuals at home and abroad. There are people who live thousands of kilometers from the scene where the action took place, newcomers to the field, and last but not least, professors of impossibility from the scientific community who have concocted preconceived opinions and have tried to make the facts fit around them. Frederick Valentich was not the only person who reported a strange object over and near Bass Strait that day and night. Researchers have found over 50 reported observations in that area which occurred before, during, and after his encounter. Most of this information would never have been found without the diligence of researchers from the Victorian UFO Research Society, based at Moorabbin, near the location from whence this mysterious flight commenced. The Bass Strait flap had been building up for over 6 weeks prior to the pilot's disappearance. The UFO flap reached a peak that very weekend of October the 21st. Most daytime sightings were reported more that day and night than any flap period that we have ever investigated. Many of these reports have been published in the BUFOR's publication, Australian UFO Bulletin, the MUFON UFO Journal, and International UFO Reporter, and other publications throughout the world. It is a confirmed fact that many UFOs were reported in the vicinity of King Island and the area around Bass Strait on that day and night. 2 months prior to that fateful event, we were receiving increasing telephone calls from individuals reporting strange light in the sky. About this same time, UFO reports were being passed on to the police and the King Island News. We were not aware of the reports occurring on this island until they were forwarded to us after the news of the pilot's disappearance became known. On that same day and night, something strange was taking place in the Melbourne and Victorian skies, as well as over Bass Strait. This is an inescapable conclusion from startling files of evidence compiled by individuals in the vicinity, documented interviews with people from unrelated locations up to 300 kilometers apart, told similar stories of round objects, starfish-shaped objects, and silver cigar-shaped UFOs moving slowly in the sky, apparently with no visible means of propulsion and no sound. Can we have the next slide, please? This is a lighthouse that he didn't pass over the lighthouse. He turned 6 kilometers this side of that lighthouse when he picked up his heading for Tasmania. We have witnesses who were vacationing along the Parker River who confirmed that that is where he turned. The transcript position of the communication between Valentich and Melbourne Flight Service as released by the Australian Department of Transport follows. Next slide, please. This will give you an idea where he was. 706, Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any known air traffic below 5,000? Flight service, no known traffic. Frederick, seems to me a large aircraft below 5,000. Flight service, what type of aircraft is it? Frederick, I cannot confirm. It is 4 bright, it seems to me like landing lights. Flight service, Delta Sierra Juliet. Frederick, the aircraft has just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above. Flight service, and it is a large aircraft, confirmed. Frederick, unknown, they were both getting up tight at this stage, sort of stuttering along. Unknown due to the speed it's traveling is that any aircraft in the vicinity. Flight service, no known aircraft in the vicinity. Frederick, it's approaching now from the due east toward me. Flight service, Delta Sierra Juliet. Open microphone for 2 seconds. Frederick, It seems to me that he's playing some sort of game. He's flying over me at 2-3 times at speeds I cannot identify. Flight service. Roger, what is your actual level? Frederick, my level is 4,500, 4500. Flight service. And you confirm you cannot identify the aircraft? Frederick, affirmative. Flight service. Roger, stand by. Frederick, it's not an aircraft, it is an open microphone for 2 seconds. Flight service, can you describe the aircraft? Frederick, as it's flying past, it's a long shape, open microphone for 3 seconds. Cannot identify more than it has such speed, open microphone for 3 seconds. It's before me right now, Melbourne. Flight service, Roger. And how large would the object be? Frederick, Melbourne, it seems that it is stationary. What I'm doing right now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me. It's a green light and sort of metallic light. It's all shiny on the outside. At this stage, the object was orbiting with him. We did not know which direction he was orbiting, turning. We found later, which I'll come to at that time. Flight service, Delta Sierra Juliet. At 7:10, open microphone for 3 seconds. It just vanished. Flight service, Delta Sierra Juliet. Frederick, would you know what kind of aircraft I've got? Is it a military aircraft? Flight service. Confirm her aircraft just vanished? Frederick, say again. Flight service. Is the aircraft still with you? Frederick, open microphone for 2 seconds. Now approaching from the southwest. Flight service, Delta Sierra Juliet. Frederick, Delta Sierra Juliet. The engine is rough idling. I've got it. It's set at 23, 24, and the thing is coughing. This is a common characteristic of the ignition systems when aircraft are near automobiles, aircraft, power lines, TVs, and all. What are your intentions, Frederick? Our intentions to go to King Island. Melbourne, the strange light is hovering again, on top of me again. Open microphone for 2 seconds. It is hovering, and it's not an aircraft. Flight service, Delta Sierra Juliet. At 7:12:28, Frederick, Melbourne, open microphone for 17 seconds. No official conclusions has been given for the strange sound which was heard that interrupted the last statement of the pilot. The Valentich counter is almost a carbon copy of an experience of a 4-man crew aboard an Army helicopter who encountered a frightening event on 18th October 1973. This was 5 years before the Valentich case. Captain Lawrence Coyne was flying near Mansfield, Ohio, at 2,500 feet when a crew member notified the captain that an object was approaching on a collision course. Coyne then initiated a controlled descent to 1,700 feet. The UFO took up a position just ahead of the helicopter, which was flying at 100 knots. The pilot was amazed his helicopter was climbing even though his controls were in ascending position. At 3,500 feet, there was a bump when the helicopter broke loose, and we think this is because the rotor on top, after he put the pressure on the control system. During this period, Coyne tried to contact airfields nearby, but both UHF and VHF frequency had failed. Coyne also reported that his compass was rotating slowly. I met him in 1981 at a conference in Cleveland, Ohio, and he explained this. His compass was just spinning slowly, electromagnetic effect again. The shape of the object was described as cigar, as long shape, and its maneuverability was identical to the one reported by Valentich. The instruments were later checked out at Cleveland and found to be satisfactory. In this case, Larry Cohen and his crew got back to tell about the experience. Frederick Valentich did not. We know that up to this stage, it was an identical description of the object that Frederick was describing. While military and civilian aircraft searched the area over Bass Strait, U4's investigators concentrated their effort with the interviews of witnesses who had reported objects they had seen flying that same day and night. Some examples of reports follow. Names are in file with U4s. Curry Island, 2 p.m. The sky was clear except one large cloud directly overhead. Out of this cloud came an object similar to a huge golf ball, about the quarter size of the moon. The object was white or silver in color. It moved slowly to the west toward the sea in the direction from which it came, then returned the direction in which it came. At that time, there was no wind. The cloud remained stationary. The UFO was the only object seen to be moving in the sky. No balloons are released at King Island on the weekends. Beginning less than 1 hour after the King Island UFO was seen, twin cigar-shaped objects were reported to be moving from west to east over Victoria near Bass Strait. They were at least seen about 4:30 p.m., or last seen rather, about 4:30 p.m., and when suddenly they changed color from silver to white, made a sweeping curve to the north and sped away. The movement of these objects was traced by interviewing witnesses scattered along the flight path until the objects sped away. The objects nearest to the UFOs were almost directly under the object, that is, the observers were almost directly beneath the objects. They described them to be about 3/4 the size of a Boeing 747 aircraft joined together with two silver beams. They were last seen over Bass Strait, and there's one area there in between Bass Strait, Cape Otway, that some lads had a possum up a tree. It's the only reason they saw it was they were watching the possum. At 6:45, just 21 minutes before Frederick Valentich radioed Melbourne Flight Service that he was encountering an unknown aircraft, Roy Manifold of Melbourne photographed a 35 film on 35 millimeter film, an object hurling in a blur of speed and mist out of the water near Cape Otway Lighthouse. All modes of computer analysis were used to gain data, including edge enhancement, color and contouring, digiting, filled in. The analysis was made by GSW. That's the person there was an engineer who worked in the aerospace industry. He had high technology equipment. William H. Spaulding was his name. The photos were also seen by other photo specialists. Next slide, please. You'll notice here the island, the reef rather, in the back. Nothing there. The next slide, please. In the fourth, you see something bobbing up and down here. And in the next slide, please. What you see here is it looks like a cloud here, but it going in 20 seconds is going into the shot 9 degrees into the shot, which meant it had to be going over 300 kilometers an hour. Now, publication of the photos brought professors of impossibility out of their armchairs for another debunking attempt. They decreed that the photos showed a cloud or puff of smoke. U4's advisor quickly exploded this hasty announcement. The object appears only in 2 of the 6 pictures taken while the camera was in automatic sequence. Now, the next slide. I took these to the United States to be investigated. The age enhancement, it shows the picture at the disc at the top. This other is missed. And the next slide, please. This is an enlargement of the actual object itself. Now, this was not the same shape object that Valentich was describing. He was describing one of larger shape. This was the smaller one. And the second, next slide, please. You can see the drops, the other enhancement, the drops of water. You can back up on that other slide as far as we'll proceed. Communication between Valentich and Melbourne Flight Service was recorded from 7:06 to 7:12 p.m. before an unexplained sound abruptly terminated the voice communications. During that time, 20 people located in different areas around Bass Strait observed a green light in the same direction at the same time. The pilot was reported the approach and description of an object with a green light. In addition, other reports which have been forthcoming, such as the southern suburb of Frankston, a mother and 4 teenagers reported what appeared to resemble a skyrocket, although the object was stationary. The color appeared to be a mixture rather of red, pink, and white. The witnesses estimated the object to be a quarter the size of the moon. The mother said that at the time of the sightings, she did not realize it was a UFO until later when she learned that other people had seen a strange object. At the same time, a bank manager and his wife was driving on the highway near west of Melbourne, observed a starfish-shaped object out over Bass Strait. They noticed green flickering lights at the ends. The couple is of the opinion that it was the same object that Valentich was reporting before the strange sound jammed the radio transmission. Another sighting was reported from Ormond, a suburb of southern Melbourne, occurring at 7:15 p.m. when lights were noted in a cigar-shaped arrangement. The lights were described as was it?
Sorry, folks, we didn't realize they do that. They're turning it down now. It won't happen again. We'll continue here with Mr. Norman in just a moment. There we go. Sorry about that. Go ahead, sir.
Was this deliberate?
Come on now. Not everything's a conspiracy.
There were many other similar reports of flying objects throughout southern Victoria during that same day and night, and they continued for several days following this strange encounter. These reports were being referred to Viewforce from various sources. An outstanding sighting was reported on Monday evening. This period of activity continued even after he had disappeared. 23rd of October 1978, only 2 days later. It occurred at 9 o'clock p.m. as 2 families were preparing to leave the beach. they saw a cigar-shaped light speeding low over Port Phillip Bay from the direction of Bass Strait. When it reached a position about halfway across the bay between the observers, well, anyway, this it flashed from south to north, and in a few seconds, these two families who were leaving the beach at the time, it was about dusk, when it got between them and Williamstown across, it flashed, and a red object came from it, moving slowly, although the cigar shape shot south to north just a few seconds. The red object came slowly over the beach where the people were leaving, and it hovered over a little town called Baxter for a few seconds and then sped away toward Bass Strait. Now, one of the best indications from the observers that a UFO was involved came a few days later when two nieces of their uncle would visit them down at Cape Otway, and also his son. And one of the nieces looked up and said, "Uncle, what is the light up there?" He looked up and saw the airplane lights. And she said, "No, I mean the green light above it." Now these people all around Bass Strait and along the Great Ocean Road saw the light, but they were too far away to see the object. And even the airplane, they knew they were airplane lights because he was the only one flying in that area. But the object, Frederick at that time, was approaching from the southwest. Now you recall that when I said he was orbiting and the object was orbiting with him, he was orbiting to the right, turning to the right. His intentions were to go on to King Island. And I know if I'd have been a pilot, all this tension going on, I would have headed back to the lighthouse to pick up my bearings. Now, if the researchers, the search and rescue, had known this, they wouldn't have spent their time down halfway between Apollo Bay and King Island. They would have, if he had a crash, they would have searched the area where he was. Now, my conclusions, the Frederick Valentich encounter provides an excellent case for study. It is an accident that we can compare with several other encounters where objects have revealed similar characteristics such as a magnetic effect, ignition failure, and as well as communication failure. There is no doubt in my mind that the disappearance of Frederick Valentich and his Cessna was caused by UFO. I do not know whether he went up, down, or disintegrated. The electromagnetic effect from the UFO may have stalled his engine, since he did report the engine was rough, violent, or coughing, and caused him to crash into the water. There is also the possibility that the mystery sound, which ended the transmission between Melbourne Flight Service and the pilot, was the sound of his aircraft in the early stages of disintegration. Another possibility that the radio frequency may have been jammed deliberately by persons or entities. Now, I'd like to point out that these four people didn't come forward at that time because they were fear of ridicule, the ridicule barrier, spearheaded by skeptics. And I'll give you a case of another one by explanation from the skeptics that's really retarding UFO research. It occurred when a plane was flying over a outback town when 10 witnesses viewed these objects. There were 7 flying in formation. They circled that plane and left the area within 3 minutes. The skeptics' explanation of this, what these objects were migrating pelicans. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to have circled an aircraft and left the area within 3 minutes, they would have had to have been supersonic pelicans completely equipped with boosters, afterburners, and asbestos feathers. I'm sorry this interruption. Thank you.